Hey guys, and welcome to another Football Manager video. In this one, it's best bargains from obscure countries. We're going to find a best 11 of players aged under 24, Premier League ready right now, or as close to that as we can get, and off the beaten track. That means no top 5 league players, no Argentinians, no Brazilians, no Uruguayans. Let's get into it. So we start with Moises Ramirez from Ecuador. Ecuadorian international, just broken into the team, 4 caps and 22 years old. Value here up to 1.4 million. To me, that seems like incredible value for a player with agility 17 and reflexes 16. I've put on the screen some weightings on the left of the screen here that some people use. 4 goalkeepers think that this is what the engine is looking for. Agility, reflexes, aerial reach, and strength. And going back to Ramirez, you can see that he's got all of those at 15 or better. If we compare Ramirez to a player like Gavin Bazunu at Southampton, we'll see a player with similar shot-stopping capability, admittedly less well-rounded, but at 1.4 million, that's a good value transfer. The scouts say Ramirez is decent Premier League, which I think I agree with. Just about good enough for the Premier League. Not amazing, but just on that border between Championship and Premier League, but with potential to improve and become a solid Premier League player. So how do we find Ramirez? Well, here on the screen we have a list of goalkeepers ranked by a weighted score based on their attributes. We've filtered out all the goalkeepers in the top 5 leagues, as well as Brazilians, Argentinians and Uruguayans. We're looking for cheap players today lower than 10 million value, so we filter out Trubin, and that leaves us with Ramirez. We then calculate the same scores but for players in England in the Premier League and Championship, and then we can scroll down to see players at around the level of Ramirez. Here's Bazunu here. So then we can take the same approach and look for wingbacks. So I've sorted it by fullbacks, and here we've got Diego Palacios as a left-sided wingback. There are videos on my channel with all you need if you want to use this scoring system on your own saves. Again, Palacios is Ecuadorian. He plays in the MLS for LAFC, and at a value of 5.6 million, another player to me that looks like a solid, sensible transfer. It's not all perfect with just the balanced personality and the 6 strength, but the acceleration, pace, stamina and work rate are all clearly at Premier League level. Scouts say good Championship. I'm a bit closer to their view on the potential, a bit further on, probably just on the borderline of the Premier League. And the player's contract runs out at the end of 2023, meaning he can be signed right away for no cost. The scoring system thinks of Palacios as a similar profile to Sessegnon, albeit with less aerial presence. He does, however, have a considerably smaller price tag and could probably just about play Premier League minutes. Looking for a right back's a little bit more difficult. We can see players here that do perform well in the scoring system, but have valuations above 10 million, which we're setting as the cap. To get a true right back available for our price, we have to scroll down until we get to Gerson Mosquera, a Colombian at Newell's Old Boys, Messi's club in Argentina. Mosquera looks like a decent right back, a wing back capable of playing good minutes in the Championship and maybe borderline Premier League minutes. But I think for this 11, we can do a little bit better by trying to convert a midfielder. It's often the case that converting midfielders to wingback works well in Football Manager. This scoring system is helpful in figuring out which midfielders make most sense to try to convert to right back. And looking at this guy Romdhane, we see here a midfielder that looks like a good conversion prospect to go to right back. A Tunisian international, 27 caps, should be able to get a work permit, 23 years old. And when we compare the polygon against Mosquera, the right back from Newell's Old Boys, we see a player that is more well-rounded and has a little bit more potential to play good Premier League minutes. The scouts see Premier League potential, albeit at a different position, because they're scouting the player as a midfielder. But Romdhane looks all in all a solid purchase at 3.5 million. A decent Premier League or upper level Championship player comparable for Romdhane is Dewsbury Hall at Leicester. Dewsbury Hall is also a midfielder that the scoring system thinks would be a sensible candidate to convert to wing-back. Here's the output of the scoring system for centre-backs. We can rule out the top 3 centre-backs, first 2 on cost grounds, and then the second one, Guznam from Monterrey, Mexico, but into the fact that he has jumping reach 12 and is only 5'11". We're looking for a bit more aerial presence in that. First guy that fits the description is here, Satsi from Braga in Portugal, a Turkish player, so we'll add him to the list. The next guy with strength 7 won't be able to play centre-back in the Premier League. This guy, 2 guys more promising, and makes the list. And then as we look for a left footer, we take this guy off the list by dint of the fact he's not quite fast enough. And so go down here to Cordoba. Cordoba here with a value of up to 2 million, plays in the Bulgarian league. He's 22 and has just made it into the Panama national team. He's solid physically with good pace and jumping reach and good tackling. The scouts see a championship player that could become a Premier League player. I do agree with that, although this is a player I think that could play Premier League minutes off the bench. This to me looks like a solid player to sign and then send out on loan. Cordoba profiles are similar to trusty left-footed centre-back that Arsenal had last season, had just sold to Sheffield United, having loaned him last season out to the Championship. It looks like Cordoba's at that kind of level. For the middle of our back three, we can look to Tunisian football and sign Tougai, an Algerian international, aged 23. Jumping reach 14 isn't ideal for the centre of a Premier League defence, but it will just about do. The scouts see Premier League potential in the future. I think that's pessimistic, and the player can just about play Premier League minutes now. Tougai profiles is quite similar to John Egan of Sheffield United, a player that's played over 60 Premier League matches. All in all, a sensible transfer at 2.6 million. Moving on to the right side of our defence, Serdar Sachi hasn't quite broken into the team yet. 20 years old, does play for the under-21s in Turkey. Good pace. The jumping reach being only 13 caused me to think the right side of a defensive 3 as opposed to playing in a 2 at the moment. Coming up for 9 million, a bit more expensive, but the scouts see 5-star potential. It's worth just noting here, I'm running this as Luton Town, so it's 5-star compared to the players of Luton Town. In practice, I think this is a player that will be a decent, middling Premier League player once he realises his potential. A decent comparison for Sachi appears to be Callum Chambers, with Sachi showing a little bit of potential to grow and perhaps become a slightly better player. So that completes the defence. And now as we look to the midfielders, we can find 2 African midfielders, one who plays in Belgium, one who plays in Turkey. Al Hassan Yusuf, a Nigerian player playing in Belgium, is a standout on the scoring system. Yusuf brings solid stamina and work rate as well as good passing and tackling. He's a fairly well-rounded midfielder and profiles are similar to Marvelous Nakamba, a player who's made 50 Premier League appearances. The scouts see Yusuf as eventually being a good Premier League player, which I agree with. You had to go a little bit further down the list to find our next midfielder. And this player, Junior Onana from Besiktas, I think is more of a championship level player than a Premier League player. 6.8 million is fairly expensive for Onana, who profiles are similar to Ryan Yates of Nottingham Forest. I think of Onana as the least bargainous of the bargains I'm running through in this video. So that puts the midfielders into the team and now onto the forwards. To play on the left of our front 3, I'm looking for a left footer, and the obvious pick is Koita from Red Bull Salzburg. I can see myself picking Koita up in plenty of saves this year. Age 23, established international, good acceleration and pace, decent composure, good off the ball, finishing. That's what I tend to look for in a centre forward. With a front 3, which is the way I tend to play at the moment, this guy on the left seems to work pretty well. Comparing Koita against Johan Wisser at Brentford, we see a pretty similar profile, a pretty similar player, and the scouts do see a bit of potential to grow in Koita. For the middle of our front 3, I'm looking for a bit more jumping reach than a player like Koita has 9. So I'm scanning down the column here until I end up here at this player, Yilmaz of Galatasaray, 6'1", with good speed, good jumping reach, and a decent but far from amazing set of attributes for a striker. As you can see, Yilmaz is clearly a pace merchant, with slightly below par for Premier League level finishing and composure. His natural position is on the right wing, but for me, I'd be putting him up front as our centre forward. He's a Turkish international with a good personality, and the scouts see a player that can develop to be a good Premier League player. With time, he should develop to be at the level of a player like Edouard at Crystal Palace, or perhaps a little better. All in all, good value for 6 million, and a player that could play Premier League minutes. The player I think we should put on the right-hand side of our front 3 is the most unusual choice I've made in this Best 11 video. Marcel Ruiz is a Mexican midfielder that the scoring system thinks should be playing up front. Luis is a solidly well-rounded player who has just broken into the Mexican national team. He has the acceleration and pace of a forward, the composure of a forward, the finishing of a forward. He's decent off the ball, and for an extra little bit of value, he's also a good corner taker. The scouts have him as developing into a good Premier League player, and if you look at Ruiz's polygon, it looks pretty similar to that of João Pedro of Brighton, a player establishing himself in a Premier League, and with a valuation, at least according to the game, of over 100 million. So that's our bargain Best 11. You can see it all on the screen now. And the question is, would that team stay up in the Premier League? Well, put it side by side here with the Premier League players that each of the Best 11 resembles. And if you look at that team, you think, well, would that team stay up in the Premier League? Well, maybe, maybe not. It would be pretty close. I think that's a yo-yo team. But the point of this video and the point of this best 11 is to show that if you look outside the big leagues and outside the mainstream footballing countries, there is plenty of solid value to be found and a few players, even in quite obscure locations, that could be playing minutes in the Premier League. Hope you found that interesting. Check out the other videos on my channel if you'd like to use the scoring system I use, or there are various videos that focus in on signing specific positions, like signing a striker or signing a wing back. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.